In today's video, we're going to highlight 6 mind habits that can derail your vitality and tell you how to change them. When you change these 6 mind habits, you free up energy for the things in life you value. Let's get into it. Habit 1. Overthinking or rumination. Rumination refers to the mental process of obsessively thinking about an idea, situation, or choice in negative ways. It's an easy habit to fall into, and most of us do it unless we know how to shift out of a rumination. Let me illustrate rumination with a quick story. A man drove late at night on a road unfamiliar to him. He could feel that his tire was flat in what looked like farmland. Grumbling, he got out of the car to learn he lacked a tire jack. He had no service on his cell phone, but he did notice a farm in the distance. He sighed with frustration and started to walk towards the light in the house. Then his mind began to ruminate. I certainly wouldn't welcome a stranger late at night. What has happened with our society? He probably has a vicious dog ready to tear me apart. I know I would. He kept awfulizing or ruminating to the point where, almost to the house, he yelled, "I don't need your tire jack, you selfish bastard!" The simple facts of the situation was, he had a flat tire, lacked a jack, didn't have cell service, and noticed a house with a light on. But his mind kicked into, what about isms, to the point of creating the outburst. It was wasted energy. You can see why rumination, left unchecked, creates twice the level of depression compared to those who don't. What can you do to stop the overthinking that leads to imagined train wrecks? Learn 3 things to free yourself from rumination. First, learn to master moments of awareness. When you start to feel yourself experience intense emotions, take a breath and name the emotions and just relax into the awareness of awareness and watch the emotions as you would in a movie theater. Just be aware of what's shooting through your brain. There's a part of you that is aware of everything you are experiencing. Relax into that part of yourself. The second rumination mastery skill is to see the facts of the situation and your desired outcomes. Remember the movie Apollo 13? They made progress when they clear about the outcome and the facts they were dealing with. Like yeast in bread, our mind can fluff up simple problems to look more daunting than they are. Relax into awareness, see the raw facts of your situation and your valued outcomes, and do one more thing. Decide and move with action. If your mind is spinning at 2 in the morning with a work situation, see it as clearly as you can, then decide on a course of action. When you do, you'll notice the anxiety dissipate. As you implement your decision, stay focused on the outcome and your mind, like a good servant, will support you. Let's move to the next habit that can derail your vitality. Habit 2. The irrational perfection gap. I worked for a manager who used to say, "Shoot for the stars, achieve the treetops." I was young and didn't know any better, so I went along. High standards are good, but in his case, when we fell short of what he felt was perfection, he lost his mind. You might be doing this to yourself. You notice a gap between what you want to see and what you're experiencing. How do you react to the gap? If you drill sergeant on yourself, you might get short-term motivation, but this approach burns you out. High-demand religions play this game by assuming that a perfect God has very high standards and expects you to meet them. This perfect God will likely reject you if you don't meet them. This is a recipe for a host of mental problems, including higher rates of suicide if you live in this spiritual culture. If you are burdened with an inner drill sergeant, Here's how you free yourself. First, celebrate the fact that you want excellence, growth, and creating to high standards. It's what you do with the gap between what you have and what you want that is the problem. Become aware of your inner dialogue about the gap and use it to learn rather than condemn. When I did this, I started to notice how I was managing the things I directly controlled and let go of the rest. I began to see missed perfectionistic outcomes with curiosity, the kind that leads to learning. Where can I adjust? As you might guess, the more you learn and adjust, the more likely you are to meet higher standards. Shift to seeing gaps as learning and you'll have more fun in life as you adjust your way to excellence. Let's unwrap the next habit. Habit 3, self-criticism and negative self-talk. Those who practice mindfulness or awareness meditation have noticed your inner dialogue and beliefs. Do you ever notice a drill sergeant or a highly critical person in your inner narrative? The belief is that if I'm hard on myself, I will improve. Does it work? If you're really hard on yourself, you're much more likely to experience depression, eating disorders, anxiety, and turn to addictions. Especially if you use permanent negative labels with yourself, you're likely to harm rather than help yourself. Sure, you might be channeling that critical parent, coach, or childhood religious leader. How do you change your inner dialogue from harsh to supportive? It's a simple two-step process. Use moments of awareness throughout the day to check in on your inner dialogue. What is the tone of my mind chatter or thoughts? Just notice. Then ask yourself, I also see or sense hope, light, possibility? Then let your focus shift to the more resourceful thoughts. It takes anywhere from 18 to 250 days to change, so be patient with yourself as you allow your inner dialogue to shift to more resourceful options. Also, avoid labeling yourself with permanent negative labels as they are false and debilitating. Instead, see or frame areas of disappointment in temporary terms. Rather than saying to yourself, I am fat, say, right now I'm carrying extra weight. Shifting from a permanent to a more temporary label points you toward change rather than staying stuck. Speaking of change, let's unwrap the next habit that can hold you back. Habit 4, comparison and envy. I golfed with a friend who was getting more and more frustrated with each hole. I was holding my own, but another friend was having a PGA level day. The more the PGA friend hit impossible shots, the more the other friend got frustrated with his shots. The comparison was ruining his day and his golf play. PGA friend noticed his frustration and said, "In golf we play with but not against others." He eventually relaxed as he let go of the comparison and focused on his game. Life is that way, friends. Sure, we compete against others in many things, but when we focus on what we control, we're much happier and much more productive. Learn from others and appreciate their results, but focus on what you control and have fun experimenting with ways to improve. Speaking of improvement, let's unwrap the next habit. Habit 5, avoidance and procrastination. I was coaching a manager to have an accountability conversation with a problem employee. After talking through the conversation strategy, I asked him when was going to do it. "Oh, I think probably end of shift." I smiled and said, "If you eat a frog to start your day, everything else looks much easier." I was referring to a Mark Twain quote, but the manager understood what I was saying. He did it first thing in the morning, and it went well. And yes, the rest of his day was much easier, as this was the most difficult and most important thing he would do all day. Do you put off unpleasant tasks or those that feel overwhelming? If so, you're human. Doing so won't be your best option. Much of what we do is urgent, but not the most important thing we could be doing. Those familiar with Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People know that I'm talking about his habit 3, put first things first. The urgent can't drown out our focus on what is most important. So again, notice when you're avoiding those important but unpleasant or overwhelming tasks, and make sure you put first things first. Let's unwrap the final habit in today's video. Habit 6, neglecting to sharpen the saw. Many of us deal with very demanding jobs, lives, partners, and life situations. It's easy to neglect ourselves in favor of meeting these demands. I've been there, and it's a recipe for burnout. Again, Stephen Covey talks about this as habit 7 in his book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. His analogy is a saw. It gets dull if you don't take it out of the cutting game and sharpen it. Create daily routines that protect time throughout the day for meditation, movement, planning, and sleep. If you don't, you won't. Learn to say no to more demands and yes to little things like morning Tai Chi, meditation, time in nature, or doing that thing that brings you joy. You need time to sharpen the saw. It's one of those things that is important but not as urgent as so many other things. Protect your time for rejuvenation and everything else will go much better. Okay friends, thanks for joining us today at the Change Capability Institute.